Hey guys, welcome back to the What's Next podcast. Coming to you from beautiful Monterey, usually brought to you by Live Well Therapeutic Massage, right there in Monterey, California. We've got something special for you today. We got something different. We've traveled north a couple hours. I've got a fella that edits all of my programs, and he does all of the work and engineering on my podcast. And boy, he's just a whiz. And we got to talking, and he's got most of his knowledge from his father, who's been working in the broadcasting business since the 50s and maybe even before. So I thought, let's sit down with Mr. Odum, Mr. Daniel Odum, and let's just have a talk about where he's been. And I hope you enjoy. Welcome, sir. How are you today?
I am fine. Thank you, and I'm very pleased to be here and to welcome you to our humble abode.
Well, you know, on this program, I like to talk to people that were successful at what they did. And more importantly, I like to talk about the path that you took to get to where you are, because that's always a lot more fun than just talking about where you ended up. You know, so tell us a little bit about from the beginning. First, what year were you born?
I was born in 1929, May 3rd, 1929, in Cary, North Carolina.
Oh, you're from the other side of the country.
Yes.
You're from North Carolina.
In the heart of the tobacco growing country.
Boy, it's hot out there.
At that time.
Have mercy.
It's not anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all cotton fields now.
As a kid from Michigan, tell me, what was your first automobile?
1931 Chevrolet sedan.
Oh, have mercy.
Yes.
How old was it when you got that? It must have been a fairly new car.
Well, I got it in about 1939. I bought it for $50.
No kidding.
Yes.
Where'd you get the money?
It was a great car. It became a part of the Greenville High School transportation system, particularly for ball games.
No kidding.
We would get all of the cheerleaders and all of the majorettes, and I would drive it. And I had been chosen as the head.
The drum manager
or
something like
that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That was the guy up in front with the big stick. That was you, huh?
That was me. That was me. And we would load it up with all these people. It had a luggage rack on the back, and 3 guys could stand on that luggage rack. And we would go for a ball game in North Carolina in that particular area, Greenville and Kinston and Goldsboro and New Bern, and I can't remember all of Washington.
Yeah.
All of these were places that we would go and play football.
Right on.
And the football bus was a big green bus, and I painted the car the same color, green.
To match the team
to
bus.
And then we would go in caravan style to the place that we were going to play ball.
Put paint on the windows and everything. Gussy it all up.
It was great fun. That old 31 Chevrolet, and it lasted a long time. It lasted until I joined the Navy in 1948. And my younger brother took ownership of it and wrecked it.
That's the way that goes, isn't it? Don't you love brothers?
Yes, and so anyhow, that was my first car.
That was your first car. Mm-hmm. What did your folks do? What did your folks do for a living?
Well, my mother was born in a family of 8 children. And in the farming part of North Carolina, where they grew tobacco. every farmer had an allowance of land that he could use
Oh, I see.
to grow tobacco.
Okay.
6 acres.
Oh, they all got
was
6
what-
acres.
They all got 6 acres. And that will, level things out pretty good.
Is that the kind of thing that if you were successful with it, you got to keep it, or what kind of a setup was
and there
that?
was I can't remember because it was all business
Sure.
and handled by my uncles, but I never got into the business part of it, except to know that there was an allowance, and so if you grew tobacco in North Carolina at that time, and it failed, you still got paid.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it was a protective thing.
Oh, well,
And,
that's nice.
And it was, but it was something that all of the farmers did at that time. Of course, there are no tobacco farms back there now.
Probably went overseas or something by now.
Well,
huh?
I think so.
Yeah.
Primarily India
Yeah,
and China.
Sure.
All news because of the soil
Yeah.
and the weather.
And-
It would have something to do with that. But our job was to plant the seeds in what we call plant beds, generally right down on the flat next to a creek or a pond, so there's plenty of water, and let the plants grow up to about 6 or 8 inches high, and then go in and pull all of the plants out, and in containers take them into the fields and dig holes and plant the tobacco plants in those holes.
So,
And they had special tools that were long. They were like long funnels. You drop the plant root first down the funnel.
sure.
Then you put a little bit of. I'm sorry. We put a little bit of dirt on it and manure.
Sure.
And then when you squeeze the handles on the side, it closed the hole over
Just
the
kind of bury it
plant.
over, huh?
So every 3 feet there would be a plant in the 6 acres of land.
Wow. So you were
And-
actually out there in the field working the plants, huh?
There was
Wow.
there was a season, and practically everybody tried diligently to grow in that season. But it also was team farming.
I see.
So all the farmers would be in one place, plant the plants, go to the next place and plant and so forth.
Yeah.
And then from then on, though, it was up to the individual farmer to grow it. And the plants would grow up to about 6 feet or 7 feet high.
Wow. I didn't know they got that big.
Yeah, they do. And there are a couple of interesting things that you wouldn't know about unless you were in the situation. The plants would grow from the bottom up, and the farther they went from the ground, the smaller the leaf would be.
Oh, I see.
The smaller the leaf would be, the more tender it would be.
Sure.
And that's where a lot of cigar wrappers came from, because bugs didn't get up there.
I see.
Yeah, tremendous amount of fertilizing and spraying and so forth all went into that
Yeah.
to keep the tobacco worms out and the tobacco moths out and so
Yeah.
forth.
So your dad was a tobacco farmer?
No, my dad was a construction. He
Oh.
was part of the construction people that
I
were
see.
building houses.
Oh, wow.
And but it was awfully difficult work, and it was extremely rare that you could get a job right after the Depression. I can remember we lived at one point. We had a situation where we had to stay in a hotel in Raleigh, North Carolina. And it was while the house that we were going to move into was being remodeled or fixed up. At any rate, we had everything loaded in, on the wagon and truck, and waited until those guys could get that house ready for us to move into, and we lived in a hotel. Right outside the hotel was a corner of a street corner, and I can remember seeing men in full dress suits
Sure.
with ties and a bundle of pencils in their hands, selling pencils to anybody.
Anything they could do to feed the babies.
Anything they could get,
Right.
that they could get cheap and sell, and so it was a rough time.
Yeah.
Right then, and we moved from there to Cary, North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Well, Cary, North Carolina now is one of the major medical complexes
Oh, is it?
in this country. Yes, it is. They have all kinds of spectacular medicine applications and abilities. So that's where we moved to then. And all this time, of course, I'm growing up, and every time we would move to a different place, because my dad was in the construction business, and they were building defense plants all up and down the East Coast.
Had to go where the work
You
was.
had to go where the work was.
I hear you.
And my mother's would say, had said, I've heard her say it, "You're not going to leave me here with 6 kids." You know. And
You come from 6 kids.
So we went, and we lived in some crazy places as a
Right.
result of it, because you really had to live where you could find a place to
Shelter.
shelter.
That's about all you had, huh?
Exactly.
Wow.
And that was during the beginning of the Second World War.
I see.
And I can remember living in at least two places where we lived on the beach. Carolina Beach and Wrightsville Beach. Both of them had defense plants close by.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why we lived there. And we were required, government requirement, to shut off all lights at night.
Oh, right. Blackouts.
Blackouts.
I've heard about that.
We had blackouts.
Oh, no kidding.
And I can remember sitting on the front porch looking out at the ocean area and seeing a glow of a ship that was burning.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
They were that close to the East Coast.
Yeah.
Now that brings up a series of interesting parts of my growing up. Topsail, North Carolina, is about 6 miles from the ocean, and that's where the school was. I got my first musical instrument there. I got a B-flat soprano saxophone.
Have mercy.
I drove everybody crazy.
Trying to
for
learn
a long
that
time. Yeah,
howling
that
and
was-
hooting thing, huh?
Oh boy. Turns out it was a very rare and very expensive piece of equipment,
Oh.
and it came in handy when we sold it.
Oh,
But
really?
anyhow,
Right.
Anyhow, we had we had Topsail High School, Topsail, the little Topsail inlet that went out to the water. Now, the water consisted of the inland waterway, which had its beginning in New York and went all the way to the Keys of Florida, less than a mile from the ocean. It was there particularly for the wintertime because the storms would not hit that like they hit the ocean. And the ships could come in to the inland waterway. It was 40 feet deep.
Wow.
The ships could come into the waterway and make their way all the way in the ports to Florida. Our house was built on a bluff overlooking the inland waterway, and right in front of our house was one of the inlets from the ocean feeding the waterway.
Sure. Right.
Every 5 miles or so, there was one of these inlets, they called them.
Sure.
So we would be we could hunt ducks.
Sure.
Because ducks flew up and down the inland waterway. We could fish, and we could crab.
Oh, yeah.
And we had oysters. We had oysters on the flats next to the inland waterway. There would be flats there where the oysters would grow, and Dad could say, "It's Saturday. Let's don't have Mom cook dinner today. Why don't you boys go down and get us a bushel of oysters?"
There you go.
And we'd go down and get these oysters that are fresh.
Right off the,
Yes.
Well, it was more than just goofing off.
Yeah.
It was actually feeding the family.
Now, on this bluff, our house sat right up on top of the bluff. Down the bluff on the north side was a driveway. The driveway went from Topsail Town Highway into a loading ramp for pulp wood.
Oh, I see, right.
And every so often, a tugboat would come in pulling 2 empty barges.
Yeah.
And they cut into the land on one side of the land side in the waterway. They cut in a big slot that they could back those 2 barges into.
Oh, yeah.
And then lay a ramp down on them, and they could bring in truckloads of pulpwood and load those 2 barges with the pulpwood.
Going off to a paper company, probably,
or
something. Yeah, sure.
Well,
we got a lot of those in Michigan.
This was during the Second World War.
I see.
We were war scared.
Did you ever get into the military?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah, I did. But to finish this particular activity, it was fun. It became fun. It wasn't fun at the time it was happening. We could look out of our house right down that inlet.
Uh-huh.
The Army station that was being built there with my dad's help.
Your dad, yeah.
Sent out 2 military men every day to guard that inlet. They came out with a .50 caliber machine gun.
Wow.
And they set up right in the foot of that, right off that road that
Yeah.
went down to the barges. They were set up, and we looked right down the waterway. My brother and I thoroughly enjoyed that because it was real.
That's real stuff
that
right
was
there.
real stuff. We had one of my sisters, both of my sisters were rather attractive, and every one of the team that came with the guns fell in love with my sister. And they had a habit of flirting with them
Sure,
and so
right.
forth. Yeah. Well, what they would do is the guys would come in, set up their equipment, their machine gun and everything, and then press the button to drop the cartridge out.
Yeah.
Okay? You in order to get the cartridge to drop out, you had to press the button, and you had to press a button on the side of the
Sure.
of the gun to
Release the
discharge the one
magazine.
that's
Sure.
in the chamber.
Oh, right, right.
Okay. And my brother, Bobby, it was his favorite to sit behind that and pretend he's shooting. Well, first of all, the very idea of guarding that inlet from a submarine coming in
Yeah, right.
was so
It's just stupid.
But anyhow, Bobby would sit down and lie down behind that gun. They had it on the ground.
Oh,
It had a 3-leg prong.
sure, yeah.
So they'd lie down on the ground, and he would press the button, and the button it would click, and he would aim at birds and whatever, so on. And this one day, this guy, he always said he pressed the button, but he evidently didn't press it far enough.
Oh,
Bobby lay down behind the gun, aimed at a crane, a bird,
oh,
and pulled the trigger. And before he could turn it loose, it had fired 20 rounds.
no kidding.
And nothing was left of that bird
No.
but feathers.
Was scared the living heck out of your brother.
These two poor guys got a court-martial.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. It was a part, it was all part of the life. You could sit out on the porch there
Yeah.
and see the glows of these.
Ships that were burning.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and it was during that time that December 7th, 1941 came along and Pearl Harbor was born. I can remember my mother coming out of the house. I was playing outside. She came out of the house and she was crying. And we were, of course, very concerned
Yeah.
that mother was crying. So what are you crying about? She said, they have just bombed Pearl Harbor. And I said, who's Pearl Harbor? We didn't know.
I thought it was a name.
My brother, then the brother above me, 2 years older than I am, joined. He was old enough to join the Navy.
Oh, I see.
And he joined the Navy. And because of his construction background, he was assigned the Seabees, Construction Battalion.
Right.
And his job was to, actually the most dangerous job in the Navy at that time was going to islands where they were going to put posts and capture and take back. The islands were at that time owned by the Japanese.
Sure.
And so he went and he leveled the ground with a bulldozer,
Oh, wow.
and they built an airstrip on it.
Oh,
And the planes that would leave San Diego or Long Beach particularly to fly to Korea or not Korea. I'm sorry. It was
France
South,
or
South
Germany
Pacific, yeah. Would stop off at Midway, and that was the name of that island. And they would stop, and a part of their deal was there was a rest, a rest and
refuel,
relaxation,
rest,
3 or 4
sure.
days, and then you get back aboard the ship and you go the rest of the way.
I see.
And so he was a part of that building the structures that were needed for providing entertainment for the servicemen that were coming over and stopping. One of the microphones that's less than 3 feet away from you was one of the microphones that was used on Midway to make announcements to the Midway servicemen that were stopping there for their rests. It's kind of funny.
So there was actually entertainment there also.
There was entertainment there.
Kidding.
There was, yes, there was.
Oh, wow. So you had 3 days to take R&R.
And the food was fantastic. They had, because it was 1 day from the United States to Midway.
Yeah.
By DC-3 or DC-4s.
Yeah.
Planes.
So
we had good food.
Once they were done with that, then your brother took the microphone and
what he did was he saw them once the war had ended. They wanted to level the land, so they tore down the building, and in the tearing down the building, they dug trenches with a bulldozer and pushed all of the equipment that they had, all of the scooters and all of the trucks and pickups and everything into that big trench and covered it over. That was the way he got rid of it. And he saw them doing that with the microphone, and when they weren't looking, he went and took it down. And about 10, 12 years later, we were visiting him in Greenville, at his home in Greenville. And he had a workshop out behind his garage. He says, I got something in the workshop that I think you'd be interested in. I was teaching at the time here at the College of San Mateo, teaching broadcasting.
No kidding.
And so he went out and brought out this brown leather looking, it was velvet bag, and inside was that microphone.
No kidding.
And it's still there.
It's right there. We'll get a picture of it and we'll put it up.
Yeah,
that's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
That's a slice of history.
Now there is another microphone in there with it, identical to it, that we bought about 5 years ago and paid $350 for it.
Wow. But it doesn't have any history or story behind it. Not like the other one.
So that was our experience kind of with the war, and that part of the war. I wasn't involved in that, but Charlie was. And then Charlie learned while he was there, he learned songs. He was a darn good rhythm guitarist. And he had 2 Gibson hummingbirds. 2 Gibson hummingbird guitars.
Wow.
Oh boy, they didn't get buried either. They came home with him.
So tell me about your time in the military. You went into the Navy.
I went into the Navy. I worked for the Cherry Point Marine Air Station. I quit school because we had gone to so many schools. I was so sick of school. On my 16th birthday, I quit school and signed up for civil service.
Oh, wow. So your dad was moving around in order to build these places. So
That's right.
In turn, you went to
wherever
new
he
school
went.
every year.
Wherever he went, that's right.
I see. I understand.
And so anyhow, at that time, I was assigned to engine overhaul
Okay.
on the Marine Corps Air Station.
Wow.
And the engines that we overhauled, that I was involved in, were R2800-18Ws.
Is that a Rolls Royce or is
Pratt
that
and Whitney 18
okay.
cylinders.
Sure.
Cylinders that fit on the outside of the crankcase.
I see, right.
And it was the most powerful engine in the Navy at the time.
Wow.
It was used for F4Fs, F6Fs, F4Us, the gull-wing Corsairs,
Sure.
and F8Fs, and then F9F was the last one that they used the reciprocating engine in.
I've seen actually some of those old boats actually from that time period. They had Rolls Royce
they
airplane engines in them.
Yep.
And they had two of them.
And they were powerful.
Oh man.
Engines, and easy to work on.
Were they?
Because all of the working materials were on the outside of the crankshaft.
Right. Just heavy as the dickens, I bet.
First of all, when you join the civil service and you're assigned a particular job, a particular area, you go to that school.
I see.
And the school I went to was the F-47. I mean, the R-2800.
Engine, yeah.
The F-47.
To teach all about the motors, yeah.
Anyhow, I had that was one of the things that really appealed to me was they had a recreation room. And in the recreation room was a player piano.
Oh, wow.
And with the player piano, there must have been 200 reels.
Did you have to pump the feet like that? I
had to pump the feet.
Sure.
And I'd pump it, and I learned all of these songs.
Off of the paper reels?
Yeah.
Rolls?
Yeah, well, because reels played, they didn't do words except printing them.
On the side?
As the paper was about, I guess it was about a foot wide.
Yeah.
And it would roll from top roll to the bottom roll, past a whole bunch of air jets.
Right.
And each air jet would activate one tone.
Yeah.
And so things like shine on, harvest moon.
Oh, yeah.
Up in the sky.
Yes.
And all of those old songs and all of the you tell me your dream and I'll tell you mine. All of the songs that were popular at that time. And I am the only person probably living today who can sing a lot of those.
Right. I grew up with a player piano in our basement in Michigan, and it was really old, and it was so neat because you could pump the pedals, and boy, all the aunts and uncles would be standing behind you, and they'd be singing, "Does your chewing gum lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight?" Remember those little songs like that? No, I'd never heard of them before.
Oh, yeah.
There was all kinds, and they just knew them, and they would just drink and sing, and they had more fun, and we'd switch out. Oh, it's my turn to pump. Yeah, and put a new reel in, and we just had more fun with that dang thing.
And it was number one, it was an exercise.
There it was.
Number two, it was something that gave you a break from what you were doing all day.
Right.
Because during that time, the war was still on. And as a result, hours were long. And,
You bet.
and and so you worked long hours, and you needed that kind of entertainment available to you, and we did. But anyhow, these were Stephen Foster songs,
Okay.
and as a matter of fact, I wrote a television show about the life and music of Stephen Foster.
Oh, wow.
It's on my computer.
You got quite a singing voice. Did your daughter say that you were in a quartet?
Yeah.
Were you in a quartet?
Yeah, I was in.
Oh, man.
I was in 4 quartets.
No kidding.
When I went in the Navy and was assigned. Oh, the reason I joined the Navy. Now I was trying to remember that. I was just out of high school. My friends were a year ahead of me, and they had stayed in school. I quit school, and for a year I worked. I worked as a busboy in a restaurant and bowling alley. I was a pin setter in a bowling alley and stuff. And so for a year, they were ahead of me, but they were still my closest friends. When school was out and they graduated, I didn't graduate.
Right.
Well, as soon as they graduated, they all joined the Navy.
They did.
And so I told my mom I really would like to go and join them and be in the Navy. My 2 older brothers had both been in the Navy in the Second World War.
So she was familiar.
This is for the Korean War.
Uh-huh.
And so she agreed to it, let me go. And I came to San Diego to boot camp. And after boot camp was over, I was assigned to the Fleet Air Squadron Phasron 7 repair facility in North Island. Are you familiar at all with that? Okay. Well, it's outside of San Diego. There's a San Diego Bay, and the land outside of San Diego Bay and along the beach is where North Island is, and the Navy has a base there.
Oh, okay.
And a training facility.
Oh, I see. Right.
For particularly for tail draggers, for planes that are learning to land on the
tarmac.
on the plane. On the
aircraft
ship,
carrier,
on
you mean?
the ship, yeah.
I see what you're saying. Sure.
So
tail draggers, is that what they call them?
Yeah.
Tail draggers?
Yeah.
Because they had to get that hook.
Yep.
I see, right.
So I was there, and I had a vacation coming, and I went on my vacation, and while I was on vacation, I got a telegram saying, report immediately. It was in June of June of 51. Report immediately to San Diego, and gave me where I was supposed to report. And it wasn't my barracks. It was a ship.
Uh-oh.
It was a carrier.
Uh-oh.
The ussphilippinesea.
Okay.
A full Essex carrier.
Diesel class.
Oh yeah, and there were two carriers in the group. Our carrier and the Valley Forge. And when I came back to San Diego from home, from my vacation, they put me right aboard that, and they assigned me to the gunnery department. And I was assigned the gunnery office. And I was offered the job of, because I could type.
Yeah. They
offered me, by the way, that's one of the classes I took in high school, was typing. So they offered me the job of the reporter in the Air Combat Intelligence, ACI, department. ACI was the department that determined where the planes that were aboard ship were going to go the next day to drop bombs and napalm and 35 and 50 millimeter guns and rockets.
Yeah.
5-inch rockets. So they asked me if could do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, get me out of here.
You better believe it. And I did. And so that's what I stayed in until I left the Navy. I was in the Navy for 5 years.
What was your job there? What was your job in
was
you had to radio the people?
One of my main jobs was because we had direct connection with the people that were doing the bombing and everything. We had reports from them every time they'd land the plane on the ship. They would make a report to us, and we'd write about all the reports up.
Oh, I see.
And so my job normally was to plot the North and South Korea areas. And the way I did it was with pins, with little red pins, and little red tip pins. And I'm in there one morning, and I'm putting the pins in because I got the information on where the lines had changed the night before. And this guy, who was about 5'11", hated tall people.
He hated tall people.
It turns out. At any rate, he walked into the office. Only pilots and officers could come into the ACI. Oh, part of the ACI equipment were survival kits.
Oh, yeah.
And in survival kits, they had a ballpoint pen and a gold bullion.
Oh, okay.
The bullion was then a very sought-after thing if they could get a hold of one, but we made sure they couldn't get a hold of them unless they were going to fly over the area.
Right.
So before they would be a part of their outfit, their flight suit would be that survival kit with all that stuff. Anyhow, I was punching buttons, and Lieutenant Carpenter came in and said, "Hey, Odum, what you gonna tell your grandkids that you did when you were in the Korean War? Stick pins in a map?" And I said, "Well, sir, all enlists have been called officers, sir."
Sure.
"Sir, I can't fly over Korea like you do every day."
Right.
He says, "You want to fly over to Korea?" "Well, yeah." "Okay, I'm flying an AD-5N. The AD-5N is a one-engine bomber."
Okay.
It was very popular during the last year of the war.
Yeah.
Because it could carry a heavy load.
Oh, really? Just with
bombs.
one motor? Wow.
Yeah. But one of those planes, of the AD-5 planes would be converted to a radar plane. And there the radar man sat with his hearing aids and there's a scope in front of him and so forth. And he would guide the flotilla of, not a flotilla, a squadron of planes from the ship over Korea to the area they're supposed to be, because he had the map that was available. And then when it was all over, everybody had spent all their loads. He would say, "Okay, home up," and they would all get together. They call off the names of all the pilots and so forth, and then they'd head back to the ship to land. Well, Lieutenant Carpenter thought it would be kind of fun to have fun with me. And what they did was, because this was the radar, it didn't have as many bombs and stuff as the other planes did, but it had 2 seats.
Oh.
Well, it had 3 seats.
Yeah, 3.
It had the pilots, then it had the radar man, and I don't know what it was for. I never have figured it out. I think it might have been a newsman.
Oh, right.
Who could sit, because right beside him was a porthole, and he could look out and see what was going on. And Lieutenant Carpenter would fly at 8,000 feet, flip the plane on its back, turn the nose down, and head for the target. And when he got to where he was supposed to be on the target, he would drop his bombs or whatever, As one of the interesting sides on that was the fact that sometimes they would drop napalm down in a valley. Sometimes they'd drop it up on a ridge. And he would drop his napalm and then duck down into the valley, and we could look and see the napalm burn.
Sure. Wow.
So then we got, in the meantime, all of this upside down, spin around. You go upside down and spin around so they can't hit you.
I see.
Can't aim at you.
Right.
So I got airsick.
Did you? Oh, boy.
I thought I'd die. I was just terrible. And this voice would come over the intercom and, "How you doing, Odum?" I'm doing just fine, sir.
A little green, but I'm good.
I wouldn't let him know for the world that I was sick. And we went through this for most of the action. We got backwards. We flew around at 8,000 feet looking down at the ship. The ship looked about that long. And I looked at that and I said, I don't care whether he lands on it or not.
Just let me out.
Just let me out. I am so sick.
Just
well,
weak.
He flew around and they took turns until it was his turn.
Yeah.
And he landed and he hooked the tail into one of the cables across the deck, stopped the plane. When he did that, I opened the door and fell out. Now, he didn't have a rear view mirror. He didn't know I did that.
Oh, yeah.
I closed the doors, I got out, or the radar man did. I don't know. At any rate, he taxied the plane up to where it's supposed to be, and they put the chocks under the wheels and so forth. And then he got out of the plane, says, "How's Odum doing?" And the radar man says, "I don't know, sir. He's not back here."
Haven't seen him.
Where is he? Yeah. "I don't know, sir. I wasn't watching. I was watching the plane deck. I didn't know. Yeah. I don't know where he is." And it scared this guy to death. He thought I had fallen out over the ocean.
Over the ocean, yeah. You're out there treading water somewhere.
And he came rumbling down to ACI, and I'm there, green. But I'm there. I'm there.
He was happy to see you, I bet.
I flew over Korea.
Did you?
During a raid.
Wow.
That was a significant part of my life. It was a very sad part of my life because 3 of my good friends all bought the farm.
Did they during the Korean conflict or war?
The only one that we have a record of was my best friend at the time, and he had an F-9F jet, and it had been hit bad enough that he couldn't get it back to the ship. And he knew where the shells were coming from, so he tipped it over aimed at the shells, and flew it into the gun pit.
Flew the plane right in?
Flew the plane in.
Wow.
And he took that pit out.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. It took him out, so he was going to take it out.
Took him out too, yeah.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, that was sad time.
He made a good decision, though, He's the only decision that he could make.
Yeah.
And
He did what he could.
Yeah.
And Lieutenant Brooks.
He was a pilot, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was.
You guys went through some tough times.
That whole time in Korea was an exciting time, an interesting time. Now, for entertainment, when I went aboard the ship, it was a Saturday night. Sunday morning, I went to church on the deck. And I went to church because I wanted all the help I could get. If we were going to go into a battle, I wanted God to help me if He could. So, I'd gone to church all my life.
Oh, have you?
So anyhow, I was impressed with the organist who also was using a pump organ. And Jim Duplaney, and the pastor was Lieutenant Commander Barnes. He was good. He was thoughtful. He had a good message for us and so forth. And afterwards, I just felt like I needed to go up and tell him, and so I did. And in the meantime, Duplaney had come and joined us. And he said, "Do you sing?" I said, "Yeah." "We need to form a choir for Sunday morning services on board ship.
Oh, boy.
Would you consider helping us?"
Well, you were a shoo-in because you knew all the songs, didn't you?
And I knew all the songs. Well, my mother was a church pianist.
She was. So
and I had been in a church choir from the time my younger brother Bobby and we sang duets. He was 5 and I was 7, and we sang at Methodist at the Ephesus Baptist Church, right outside of Cary, North Carolina. We sang "Jesus Loves Me" in front of the church.
Right.
And so I had a reputation kind of built up.
Yeah, right.
Anyhow, so I said, "Sure, I'd love that. I'll help you." And so we found a place, one of the arresting gear, where the arresting gear is located are these big cylinders that take up the space. When the plane hits the wire and pulls the wire, it squeezes, So anyhow, but they are absolutely worthless otherwise. They don't do anything. So we were given permission to use one of those as a rehearsal hall. So I put out the word that we needed a church choir. And we must have had 50 guys show up.
No kidding.
The first Sunday time that we were going to put something together, we just sang standard old hymns. But there were 450, 500 guys that came to church.
Right.
And
sure.
It was a good thing to do. When it was over, we had Duplaney came and said, you know, I would love to see us maybe have a little chorale out of this group. And he said, there's something going on that you don't know about. About half of these guys three of these guys that are in the group are all officers. And you're
enlisted.
I'm an enlisted man. But those three officers obeyed every command that I put out. That was great fun. So anyhow, we ended up with 12 guys, and they were good.
In that singing choir, yeah.
In that singing group.
Wow.
Out of that 50 group, 12 of them stayed and sang on Sunday mornings. And one of those guys had been in the Fred Waring School of Music when the war came on. He was in the reserves. He was called in. So he came up to me and said, you know, I can get us all the music we need.
Really? Yeah, right.
Right. In about 2 weeks, we got a trunk full.
Really?
Of all kinds of music.
The military boys need it. So
a lot of military music, a lot of popular music.
Oh, really?
And spiritual.
Church hymns,
sure. All of those kinds of things. Country music.
Oh,
all
yeah.
That. So we were just having a wonderful time putting that all together. And Christmas time came around. Well, we had determined that we would put together a Christmas program to go to the different officers' quarters and so forth and sing for them.
Sure.
And one of the people that became aware of us was the PI, the public information officer aboard the ship. Now I haven't told you that also on our ship was the admiral that was fleet master.
Okay, sure. He's a bigwig.
Yeah. And so the admiral was Admiral Struble. And he had his office, the green room, and everything that admirals and that are in charge of everything have. And the PI heard us one night. Someone told him about our singing, and he came into one of our rehearsals, and he said, you know something? I think you ought to sing for the admiral.
Uh-oh.
So Christmas Eve of that year, he gathered us around the outside door to the green room. The admiral was in the green room at the long velvet-topped eating table.
Oh, yeah.
And working on stuff, whatever he worked on. And the PI had evidently worked it out ahead of time that he had a group that he wanted to introduce him to.
Yeah.
So he said something about it's Okay, open the door. Let him in. And we stood outside the door and sang Silent Night.
Oh, wow. Right.
The Admiral cried.
That's great.
Then he says, come on in.
Yeah.
All of you, come on in. Come on in. Sit down. We're going to watch a movie together.
How about that?
And we saw Samson and Delilah movie.
You never forget that.
Never forget that. Yeah. Yeah. I had that group, and we went all over Japan with that group singing in hospitals every time the ship would dock. From being out in the ocean and coming in to dock for resupplies and stuff, they would give us free, what they call freeboard liberty. And our first 3 days on shore, during that time, normally it was 2 weeks. First 3 days, we traveled. They had a bus for us that took us around to the different hospitals, and they were all over the place.
Fantastic.
In Japan.
Oh, in Japan.
Saipan,
Saipan or whatever.
Sasebo and Yokosuka. These were all people that were in in the war, and that was where they were brought for initial repatriating, whatever.
Ah, right.
So somebody from the Armed Forces radio heard us.
Really?
Yeah, and he arranged for us to have a place where we'd go the first day that we'd get to the island. We would have a program organized, put together for that, for a half hour
Sure.
of music.
Yeah.
And we'd sing for those guys.
Oh, wow.
It was fun. It was
Had
great.
you still had the organist with you
And
and all that?
oh yes,
Sure.
Peter. Oh yes.
You had the whole...
He was with us. He was with us. It was a special time of my life. And then I was sent back. The ship came back to the U.S. Took 2 weeks to get from Japan here. And during that 2 weeks, we had a poker game going. And I opted in the first day, and I got some kind of phenomenal amount of money.
Did you?
Going up. But the last thing you want to do is leave a game when you're winning ahead like that.
That's the best time you want to leave.
I left. I had $13 more than I had gone in with.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Yep. And then I was transferred to El Centro, and that's where I met Linda.
That was my next question. Tell me where.
Well, Linda was in the Methodist choir there, and but I knew nothing about her. But I had a good friend, and the kid had been caught after having drunk 2 or 3 beers. He was caught, and his license was revoked for a while. And he came to me, and I had a 1941 Ford.
Woo!
This was a 41 Ford Coupe.
I know the exact car. I
Do you
love
really?
that car.
Okay.
Love that car.
So anyhow, I'm sorry. I told that wrong. It was a my first car was a 31 Chevy.
31.
This one was a 41 Chevy Coupe.
That was
straight 8. You know,
That was the last year they made them for a long time.
Yeah,
4 or
that's
5
right.
years. Then they came out with the 46 that almost looked exactly like the 41.
Yeah,
They just put different headlights on it. Because they were probably making tanks or something in those.
Well, what I was doing was, no, I told him I don't want to go into town to take you to your date. He says, well, I'll arrange for you a date too.
Oh, have mercy.
I said, oh.
Okay.
I didn't have a date at the time. I didn't have a girlfriend. So I went in, and I'm sitting at the bar, and this gal was waiting on us, and she was singing, and she had a nice voice.
Right.
I said, wow, you sing real good. Do you sing in a choir anywhere? She says, yeah, I sing in the best choir in the Imperial Valley, the El Centro Methodist Choir. Oh, are you going to be there this Sunday?
Yeah.
Says, yeah. Okay, I'll see you there. I didn't go on the date that night. I'm glad I didn't. And the next Sunday morning, I went to church, and there was, I don't know, I think she had about 80. This is in Imperial Valley in El Centro. There couldn't have been more than 18 or 20,000 people in town.
Yeah.
And there are about 80 of them are in the church choir.
Wow.
So I really turned on to that.
Yeah.
And I went up to the choir director afterwards and said, I'd like to sing with your choir.
Is there a place for me?
Yeah. And she says, well, I'd like to hear you sing first. I said, okay. We went to her house, and she had me sing, dark is all work on the Mississippi, dark is all work while the white man plays, toting that barge from the dawn till sunset, toting that barge till the break of day. You don't look up, you don't look down, you don't dare make the white boss frown. Bend your knee and bow your head and tote that barge until you're dead. Let me go away. It's the Old Man River.
Okay.
That's a preamble to Old Man River. Anyhow, I say, and she says, fine, I'd be very happy to have you in the bass section. Well, I went to the bass section, and she sat me beside her husband, who was president of the local junior college, and a bass, good bass. And she wanted him to hear me sing, to make sure that she hadn't made a mistake.
Sure.
And so forth. And there were the girls, and Linda was one of them. Now, I came back to the base, and I told my buddies, we had a quartet. We had a barbershop quartet that we had formed, and we used that barbershop quartet to provide entertainment when the dance bands wanted to take a break. We would go, we were waiters. We were singing waiters.
Oh,
we'd
sure.
go up and we'd sing a bunch of old barbershop songs.
Yeah.
Okay. So I went back and told these guys, this is a real fun. This is a fun group of people, and they're good. And my mother has always told me, if you want to find a good-looking girl who's nice, go to church.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, we did, and they did, and immediately we decided we would stay together as a quartet in the church choir.
Ah, right.
But we needed an accompanist. And Linda is an expert accompanist.
Oh, I see. In a piano.
So
Is that what you mean? Oh.
So she accepted our offer to be our accompanist. And then for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, all of a sudden I looked at her and I said, hey, she's
She's a bit of all right.
she's kind of nice. Yeah, that was 68 years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Well, longer than that because I married her 68 years ago.
Yeah, my dad was, he graduated from Michigan State at about 1953.
Uh-huh.
And it was either we were listening to oldies like Beach Boys or it was country music. But his favorite music was the barbershop quartets. He just loved everything about it, you know. And yeah, it was just, he just loved that music.
Oh, yes.
That was your time, eh?
Yeah. Yes. We had, and we stayed together for a long time.
Yeah.
5 or 6 years. Different ones changing from time to time, but I stayed with the quartet, and Jim Jeffries stayed as a top tenor. Jim, somebody says, how high can he sing? They say he could get up before morning.
Right.
And he was so good. He was such a good tenor. And Floyd Tiderman, who was a banker in real life, and but a superb bass. He wasn't as big as a minute, but he was a fantastic bass. I never could understand how he could do that, but he did. So I ended up, when I got out of the Navy, after my 5 years, I went to work, and my first job was with La Bolsa Tile Company. This was an organization, a ditch digging organization that would dig long, deep ditches across a field and lay drain tile in the bottom of the ditch and fill it up, and then all the drain water would drain into those pipes and out, and it would take the salts with it. So he had, it was in the early 40s, probably they determined that worked.
Yeah.
And so he had work. Boy, he worked like crazy, and he had this company, La Bolsa Tile Company, and they needed a purchasing agent because they had all this big equipment that had all these parts that all wore out at some time, chain links, huge chains, and big drive wheels and things. And so I went to work for him. At the same time, I was singing in the church choir. We were not involved with each other romantically at that time. We knew each other, but we weren't romantically involved. And then I determined I said something that Mr. Waterman, who was the principal, the president of the college there, I said something to the effect of, I can't do that because I can't read that well. He said, that's a damn lie. And it's the only time I ever heard him swear.
Really?
Yeah. And I said, what do you mean? He says, listen, you need education, but there's nothing wrong with your ability to read.
Yeah.
So I quit my job, and the next time that school was ready to start, I signed up.
Did you?
And when I was, after, yeah, the only thing I had was my GI Bill.
Oh, yeah.
So I figure I got to get a job. If I'm, if I'm not working there anymore,
Yeah.
I got to have a job. So I walked down Main Street in El Centro. The first place I walked was McMahon's Furniture Company. Nothing doing. I walked into the next building, and the next building was the Martha Hotel. Anyhow, the one big hotel in El Centro. And on the floor of the hotel were offices.
Sure.
And since I had had the experience with Armed Forces Radio, and I didn't tell you, but a part of the job of doing the programs, I was EMC.
Okay. Oh, okay. Sure.
So it all worked.
Sure,
together.
Right.
So here I go into this office complex, and I saw these KICO. What the heck?
What does that mean?
Kiko.
I know, but at the time you must have been
Time.
like, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah. So I walked over. Now I'm gonna have to back up a little bit. During the time we were singing together as a quartet, we also had a bunch of girls that sang with us, and we called ourselves the El Centro Chorale. We were there just to entertain when the people wanted entertainment and they needed somebody to fill in. We'd come in and sing for them.
Sure.
So we were singing, but as a matter of fact, Linda and Judy and their parents, anyhow, they were not there. They were not in the group. I was at home, and the phone rang, and on the other end was the voice of this guy saying, "You're Dan Odum?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You have a singing group." And I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "We have a telethon that's going on the local channel this coming tomorrow night." This was Friday night. Tomorrow night. We have arranged for the Hollywood Choir to come down and be our entertainment. And they told me today that we had requested that only they bring 20 of their people because we didn't have room for them. And they called today and said they can't do it. Their union will not allow them to send just 20 of the group. So we're going to have to back out. So I don't know where this guy, Charles Noble, I don't know where Charlie Noble got my name, but he called me on the phone, said, "You have a choir?" I said, "Yeah." Well, would you be possibly interested in helping us out with this telethon? What we need is somebody at the beginning of the show to sing "God Bless America." And then the actors will all come on stage and they'll do their thing. But we need somebody to come in and sing. Would you consider doing it?
As a group.
As a group.
Right.
I said, well, I'll try.
Right.
So what I did, I had all the telephone numbers of and by golly, every one of them.
No kidding.
Every one of them.
Not one
said
bailed.
they could do it.
Wow.
Now, in that group, I had Bobby Robinson, who was the finest trumpet player I have ever heard.
Wow.
Ever.
Really?
Ever.
No kidding.
So Bobby, and he's also a bass. At any rate, I called him and told him what we were doing. I said, we don't have, I told Charlie Noel, I said, we don't have an arrangement of God Bless America.
No,
But
right.
but we do have You'll Never Walk Alone from the Broadway musical. He said, what could we ask for?
Yeah.
Okay. So I called Bob, I called everybody, and I asked Bob, I said, you know, that place where Judy's Linda's sister normally sang a solo, would you do a trumpet solo? Yeah, sure.
Wow.
We went on that night. The lights were all dim in the studio, and a crippled kid with braces on his knees that squeaked came out of the darkness and walked up to the microphone and sang and said, your dimes will help, and turned around and walked off. And we started, when you walk through
Oh,
a
no
storm,
kidding.
keep your chin up high. And did the whole thing. When it was over, the master of ceremonies was weeping. So that was, but it was not Charlie Noble, it was somebody else. Charlie Noble was at a telephone, and one of the places where they took down the
Donations.
the bids,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, and so forth. So I never saw Charlie. Now, the day I went into KICO to see if there was any job, I walked over to the desk and I said, my name is Dan Odum, and I'm looking for work because I want to go to school. I want to go to broadcast school. And he stopped. He had been typing. He took his glasses off and put his glasses down on his desk. He says, well, Dan Odum, you don't know me, but I know you. You pulled my ass out of the fire
Oh, it was that guy.
that night when I called you and asked you if you had a choir.
Boy, the stars
I'm
aligned
sorry
that day, didn't it?
about the language there, but that's what he said.
Sure.
So he said, we don't have a thing open right now, but you'll be the first. And to get an opportunity to have one, the next morning, my phone rang,
No
and
kidding.
it was the owner of the station.
Wow.
And he said, tell me a little bit about yourself. What are you doing? What are you doing? And so on. And we talked a while. He says, okay, you just passed your audition.
How about that?
Can you be at the station tomorrow morning at 5:30?
Wow.
That's when we turn the transmitter on.
So he actually wanted you to do some work on air.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, the job was what they call a combo man.
What's
A
that?
combo man is somebody who spins the records himself, writes his own commercials if he needs to, and does all the announcing, all local live announcing.
Yeah.
And so the guy that was assigned for the next day had gone to Tijuana. He had managed to get a hold of the company checkbook.
Oh, jeez.
And before they caught him, he had spent a whole bunch of money. Then they caught him. And of course, then they had to fill the job. They called everybody to try to get him. And then somebody evidently told him about my background and so forth. And this was the next morning.
Yeah.
After our meeting. And I went in. He was with me for about 2 hours while he showed me where everything was and how everything operated and so forth. He had, you'll love this, he had a tee-off time that was in about an hour. And he had about an hour to get there.
Going through quick.
He left. I'm by myself in radio station.
An hour into it.
And I did it.
You did it.
I did it, and it was so much fun because one of the first things was that all of those 80 members of the church choir listened to that station.
Oh, right.
So immediately the phone started ringing.
You were a hometown star right away.
Fun. Yeah. So that was how my choral conducting career started. We organized what was called the El Centro Chorale, and we got a picture of that here somewhere. Anyhow, it has me standing up in front of it, and in the back row is one of our choir members. He had type 2 diabetes and refused to take the medicine.
Oh.
And he left us. So, but it was so much fun to look at that picture and realize that was 60 years ago. He's standing up in the back row.
Wow. You know, I love I've seen plenty of programs where they show radio before television, where, you know, you're maybe a spy story, and they had a board across, you know, that was above, so when the guy walked on it, it really sounded like
sound effects.
A bad guy coming down the hallway. And they had a stairway with a door over here and a couple of pieces of glass that they could smash or open the door, and then you hear you walking up the stairs and then close the door. And it was really neat, you know, how they made sound effects.
Yes.
You come over here, let me show you a thunderstorm, and they had a big piece of sheet metal. And another guy with a thing that he would turn that sounded like the rain, and then they would rattle that thing to make thunder again. And boy, it sounded exactly like it. A piece of plastic. You know, what was the plastic for? I guess that was the fire.
Could be.
It was
fire.
Fire.
You could
crackle, crackle.
It sounds like a fire.
Oh, it's so neat.
You see that picture leaning up against the wall with the two guys in it? One of those is one of the original cast of the Lone Ranger.
Is it really?
On radio.
No kidding.
Dave Parker.
Oh, on radio.
On radio.
I mean, I used to watch it in black and white because it was reruns, you know, but that was before that even. This
guy, we were coming home from a trip to Lake Tahoe where we had a little vacation, and I turned on old time radio, and it was a scary.
Yeah, right.
And he cried or was saying, "Please turn it off, please turn it off." Yeah, because it was our method of entertainment.
Yeah.
To a great degree.
Right.
I can remember playing sandlot, softball, or baseball, and Mother coming to the door and saying, "The Lone Ranger will be on in 5 minutes." And we drop all of our gear and head into the house
just cleared the sandlot
to hear the Lone Ranger. You betcha.
That was one of my favorite shows as a child on the TV, but it was black and white, you know.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you didn't know, I'll bet you didn't tell him, was his mother, you met her, was our sound effects. We have a group called...
Sure.
We have a group called the Broadcast Legends Old Time Radio Players. and we do 4 shows a year.
Uh-huh.
I have been. I haven't done the last. I didn't do the last one. That was
Yeah.
our first one. But I've done all of them up until last year, and
She was your sound effects lady, huh?
and she is our sound effects lady. Yeah, and then we have Bob Brown, and Bob Brown is our sound effects tape. So he has all those things like gunshots.
Oh,
'Cause
sure.
you can't shoot a gun
Yeah.
on radio now or television.
Yeah.
And he has all of the music breaks. He has recorded all of those musical inserts between the acts
Yeah.
and so forth. And we make it look pretty good, huh? From time to time.
I think so.
And we will continue. We continue to do that because most of the guys that are players are old.
Sure.
They remember. In some instances, they remember it, and will hold a microphone and do it. Other times, they'll do it around 144 BX ribbon microphone. There are about 10 of them, 10 guys, Wade, in that group.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's funny how you see them, though. You know, if it's not your turn, they step back a couple of steps. And if your part's about to come up, they take a couple of
You
steps.
got it. That's
right.
right.
By the phone or by the
That's right.
microphone, and they're holding their, waiting for their part. And then they take a couple steps back, and the next person's line, he steps up to the microphone. That was really neat. It's just fun to watch. Yeah.
You know, and that is such a rewarding experience because you cannot do that unless you join them.
Must be a lot of practice.
It is a lot
Must
of practice,
be a lot
but
of practice.
you've got to accept and accept the character.
Right.
And then stay with that character. You can't lose that character.
You might be 2 or 3 characters though.
Yeah,
back
right.
Then.
Well,
Lower your voice a little bit.
There are
This is-
several. He had me do one that I have enjoyed over the, and it was as a little old lady on a ranch. Well, well, Ezra, if it hadn't been for the Lone Ranger, we'd have lost the ranch. You know, and
Who was that masked man?
and I can whinny like a horse sometimes.
Right, all kinds of sound
Oh,
effects.
and you do, yeah. Well, you do it if you need to.
Right.
You know, if it's needed, you create it.
Sure.
And,
Sure.
and the phenomenal success of that, to me, is that the people that are listening believe it.
Sure.
We do a show for a retirement home in Palo Alto, the Vi, and I can remember the first time we did, and I think it was one of the Lone Rangers. By the way, that guy David has about 30 scripts that were used in the broadcasts.
Really? The
Yeah.
originals.
So the
Yeah,
original,
right.
that's right.
Wow.
That's right. They are right. So I can, you know, it's interesting to be able to be there reading a script and look out at the audience and see somebody with his eyes closed and a smile on his face.
Truly. Yeah, right.
He's there.
Right.
He's back there.
He's there.
there.
You put him
Yeah.
there. That's a
And,
good storyteller.
Well, it really is.
Well, right.
It's really. I look back at it because, and I have to I guess at some point I figured I had to tell you this. You have caused more memories
That was the point.
to generate in my mind
Right.
than I have in years and years and years.
And your kids are saying, well, remind them of this story. Have them tell this story.
Yeah,
Remember
well,
that one, right?
I don't.
You got
and
your own
I
stories
don't
that
want
you
to
dang
kill.
near forgot about.
Yeah, I don't want to kill it by saying this is a story. I just wanted to repeat it.
Yeah, right.
It's my. This is the way I lived. This is how I grew up. My high school days, horrible days.
Sure. For most people, I think.
Don't even like to think about them.
Well,
but-
I've known your son Wade for a little while now, for a few years, and we've become good friends. He's very honest, very just got a great sense of humor, great morals. And I didn't have much of a childhood, so I ask people like this, how did you be such a great guy? And he'll say, well, my parents, they were very musically inclined. They were very religious. They were very adamant about going to church, and they were very adamant about having music in the home and all these different things. So he had great things to say about his childhood. And that reflects on you,
Well, one of the things that we haven't mentioned in this is that for 35 years, Linda and I were a team.
Yeah.
She was an organist and I was a conductor.
Oh, I see, right.
For
Right. So once you got out, so where were we? You had gotten the job at the radio station.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to save money to end up going to school to be a broadcaster.
Yes.
Did you end up doing that, or you just stayed with the radio?
Yes.
Did you work at the radio while you were going to school?
I was working on my master's.
I see.
I was working on my master's, and Doug Montgomery, he had specialized in television. I specialized in radio. We were really good, close friends.
Yeah.
And his daughters babysat our kid. And
where'd you know him from?
He was chosen by the College of San Mateo.
I see.
Committee. What is it? District, College of San Mateo District, to open up their television station. Now, no other school in the state of California had an open circuit television. They had closed circuit on the campus, but they did not have open circuit
I see.
where people in the community could hear them.
Probably didn't even know how to broadcast an audio. I mean, a video at that point, did they? I mean, how radio was only about 30 years old.
No, we had video.
We
didn't, 2-inch. We had 2-inch, and quarter-inch, half-inch.
Yeah.
But the thing was that they wanted someone who had broadcast on the air experience.
Right.
So they got him.
I see.
A year later, I'm in my office. I was managing the local FM classical music station that belonged to Time Life broadcast and was sister to Kogo AM, which was NBC in San Diego.
I see. Okay.
So I'm the FM arm of that.
Boy.
And in walks one day Doug Montgomery, and I said, well, you're slumming, huh? I understand you have the absolute tops of all jobs in broadcasting right now. And he says, yeah, that's what I want to talk to you about. And he said, we have the television station the transmitter operational. We have the chief engineer located and is very, very good. All of these people. But what we don't have is audio. So would you be interested in coming up? He also, he knew that I had taught night school in San Diego. I taught beginning speech, and it was just to help people determine what vocabulary would work best in certain circumstances, and what that stuff. At any rate, I enjoyed it. So he was aware of that. So when he came in and said, I know that you enjoy teaching. Would you be interested? And I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds. And I said, you have an application form? I sure do. And he went out to the car, he got an application form, brought it in. I filled it out. He drove back up to the CSM, met with the division director, who was head of the technician division and responsible, by the way, he was on the team that developed the atomic bomb.
Yeah, well.
But Dr. Jacob H. Weens, and color television. He was also on that team.
Really?
Yeah. So he Doug asked him. Doug Montgomery was my boss's name. If it would be okay to talk to me about permanent involvement, and he said absolutely. So then he took over. Dr. Weens said, I'll show you around the campus. And we walked around the campus, and he introduced me to the vice president and the president and the dean of instruction and a couple of teachers and so forth, just simply as Dan is here looking at the possibility of maybe getting involved with us later on. And then we went into the bookstore, and he introduced me to the bookstore manager as our next faculty member.
Like, wait, what happened to
Who, me?
I know, right?
So that was, at that moment, they told me what I really was going to have to do. I was going to have to develop a program. I was going to have to print it. I was going to have to go through all of these red tape things that teachers have to do if they start a program. And I did, and I put together a program based on my experiences with KOGO and KICO, and there are a couple of things that I didn't mention earlier with reference to KICO, where when the top light went out on the tower was 50 feet tall. Top light went out. I called the chief engineer. He was on his radio at Salton Sea.
Oh.
70 miles away.
Yeah.
And he says, you're going to have to change that light.
That's not my job description.
And
it is now.
And I went up, I climbed that tower and screwed out the old bulb and put in a new one and went back down.
Wow.
I did that.
With your knees knocking together.
Yeah, I'll tell you. And then at one time, the final tube, what they call the output tube, of the station failed. We had a spare. But you don't just go in and pull that one out and push it in.
Oh, I see, right.
And so he said, all right, get your phone set on your shoulder so you can talk to me. And I'll tell you, I'll walk you through it. And what he did was told me that over in the corner, you see that white stick with the red tip on it? And the red tip has copper wrapped around it. I want you to take that white stick, get a hold of the very other end of it, and reach in and lay the copper band over the top of the output tube. And I got it about that far from and he said, and don't be touching in the metal. And about that far from the tube itself, a spark jumped from that end of that.
Sure.
Of that, and then I had to put the other one in. Well, putting it in is not a problem. The problem is it had developed a capacity, evidently, that was just sitting there waiting for me to put my hand on it.
Oh, jeez. That is the early days of broadcasting.
Those are things. I was by myself. I had to know how to do that. So when I wrote up my lesson plan they wanted me to teach 2 classes. Actually, they wanted me to 3. I didn't want to teach 3. 2 would be fine. The 2 classes, beginning and advanced studio operations. And as a result, they had to learn mic techniques. They had to learn how to set the mics up. They had to, in addition to this, select the music that was going to be being played. They had to learn how to handle records in a very pristine condition.
Yes.
And without noise and stuff on them, because they were all this was the early days of 33 1/3.
Sure, right.
And the old 78s that we had to be extremely careful cleaning.
They were like glass, weren't they?
So that was all of that was in this plan that I wrote up.
So you designed the whole curriculum.
I designed the radio
cover
curriculum.
to cover. How about that?
And it was the thing that Hal Ramey, John Miller, all kinds of people have taken to prepare them for their initial jobs, because most of the time when a kid went through 4-year education in broadcasting, he went to work for a small town station somewhere out in the boonies.
Sure.
You know, and in order to work in the boonies, you had to climb the tower from time to time, and you had to change the tubes.
They had to know that stuff then.
You had to know that stuff. It had to be done.
Yeah.
And there's nobody else
And you
there
better know how to do it.
Right.
I had your daughter and your sons have written down different stories, and they said to ask you about the time that you drove down the railroad tracks. What was that all about?
Okay. I told you about the green 1931.
Yeah. The 31.
Well, now I don't know that it's that way today, but I think it probably is. The space between the rails of a railroad track are exactly the same as the space between two of the wheels of a car of that vintage. Anyhow.
So if the rubber's sitting on the tracks itself or on
what
the
you
outside
do
of
is
the
you
tracks?
let most of the air out,
Oh, I see.
and
And it wraps around the rail.
wraps around.
Never heard of
And
that.
I got this bunch of guys. I said, "You guys want a fun thing to do?" And yeah, what are you gonna do? So get in the car. They got in the car. Now, the railroad tracks run right through the heart of town.
Okay.
So it was no problem at all finding a place to get on.
Oh, on any straight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And let it go. And we got about a third of the way across, and I had chosen a time when I knew that the train was not scheduled to be there. Something had happened.
Oh, no.
And the train was either early or late, to the point where it was coming around the bend about a half a mile away.
Oh, no.
And it was a steam engine puffing up black smoke.
You'd see that sucker
coming around that, and we're talking about it. There ain't no way we're going to back up.
Nope.
So we drove very carefully and very quickly across the trestle. Got on the other side, there was a frontage road that drove across the trestle.
Uh-huh.
And I was able to get on the, oh, sorry about that. I was able to get on that frontage road and get off as he went by. He did not slow down.
He was probably eating a sandwich. He never even saw you there.
Yeah. Well, Lindsay Dudley and I had bought the Clark's Drive-In was right where the highway crossed the tracks, and that frontage road crossed the highway. So we had stopped and at one point at some time and got hamburgers, and we went out and walked halfway across the trench, and sat down on the ties that were strung out.
Sure, right.
And we opened our hamburgers just as we heard the train. And it wasn't supposed to be there, or we were wrong anyhow.
Yeah, right.
So we both put our sandwiches on one tie. The ties jutted out about that far.
Yeah, not much.
Put it out, and then we sat on the tie next to it, and that train went by.
Went right by you.
Went by
It's
us.
right there, huh? Wow.
Lindsay was on one side of the track, and I was on the other. And we didn't think anything about it.
Really?
No.
They were also telling me a story about one time when you were walking home in the dark and you heard a ghost or something.
No,
If you're not done with the last story.
It was a squawk owl. It was a barn owl.
Oh, okay.
And it was dark. I had gone to see this girl. She was a majorette, and we were part of the convention of high school bands that got together and decided who was the best band and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
Competition. And this gal they brought their whole band, of course. And I think we brought our whole band too, including all the majorettes.
Sure.
They didn't play anything.
No, right. Had to be there.
And but this good-looking blonde with blue eyes was there, and we kind of connected.
Sure.
Yeah. So we worked it out that I would come and see her. And I did. I got the bus, I didn't. I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't have my car at that time. But anyhow, I got the bus. I went to see her, and we dated. We went out to dinner. We had a good time, and then it was time to go home. I was sure that they were going to invite me to sleep on the couch, but they didn't.
Nope.
They said good night.
Right.
And I got outside with my little suitcase. I had a package of cigarettes in my pocket because I was smoking then. And I went out and there was a bus line that went a part of the way to where I wanted to go, Greenville. But then it turned and went a different direction. And I didn't want to go that way. It wouldn't do it. It was a Sunday night, and I had to be at work Monday morning.
Yeah.
So I took my little my suitcase thing, and I'm walking down the road, and as I get further away from town, the darker it gets.
Yeah.
Now, this is all country where there's a lot of marshes and swamps.
Uh-huh.
And I got to the place where I couldn't tell, I couldn't see
Where the road?
the edge of the road.
Oh, okay.
But I could tell when I stepped off onto the
Oh
dirt.
my gosh.
Oh, okay, and then I would
That's
step
dark.
back on it. And once in a while I'd stop and light a cigarette and walk on down the road. And the trees were grown. This was an area where the trees grew right up to the road, and the trees were growing over the road.
So there wasn't even moonlight.
There was no moonlight,
Oh,
believe
no.
and it couldn't get to us anyhow because the tree was up.
Right.
So I'm walking along there, and you can hear the frog croaking, and all of that, and then I heard the most unbelievably horrible sound of a screeching, screaming, and it turned out it was an owl, a barn owl, and it was right over my head
Wow.
in the branches, and when I got right under it, it screamed.
Wow.
I'm not sure I wet my pants, but
Somebody did.
I could have without any problem.
I'm not sure
At
who wet my
any rate,
pants at the moment, but
I had to stumble around till I could find my suitcase again, and I did, and I walked, and every time I'd step off the curb, I'd know which side was on, and I took, and I walked past several houses. There was all farmhouses where the dogs would come out to the fence and greet me.
right.
Well, that's that's all right as long as they stay on their side of the
Side of
fence.
the fence.
And at some point, I heard a sound that caused me to stop. And I stopped, and I reached, and I took a cigarette out of the cigarette holder, out of the pack, and I lit I had a book matches, and I lit the match to light the cigarette, and I saw two eyes right in front of me.
What the heck was it?
12 feet in front of me. It was a dog.
Oh, wow.
And my heart went right here.
Yeah, right.
What am I going to do? So I reached down very carefully with picked that suitcase up, and I pulled it behind me, and I swung it and caught those two eyes right between the two of them. And the dog yowled and barked, and some guy was tending his barn. It was the barn was in operation at the time and was curing the tobacco, And he called the dog, and the dog ran to him, and he came up to me. He had a hand lantern.
Oh, okay.
And I'm just a puddle.
You're a train wreck.
I had not been able to see a thing until I lit the match.
Right.
So then he asked me, "What are you doing out here?" And I told him. He says, "Well, at sunrise, I'll take you into town."
There you go.
And he took me home.
Surprised that, yeah. That's crazy.
That screech owl, barn owl, I don't know what it was, but it makes an unholy sound.
In the middle of nowhere in the dark, too.
He couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 feet away from me.
You must have been picturing witches on brooms or God knows what.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Really. So that was fun. That was fun. Thomasville Furniture comes from that town that girl lived in.
I've heard that name.
I never saw her again.
Yeah.
When we were moving up and down the coast to stay with Dad, one of the places that we stopped at, or were at about a year, I think, was Charlotte, North Carolina. And it was an English village located on the coast of North Carolina. And you talk to people and they say, well, it's high time to go dig titers. So they had specific language affectations. And every time we had a rainstorm, there was a dock and pier and boats tied up to so forth. Every time there would be a storm, quite often it would flood. And as a result, there were boats up the river that would break loose and come flying, floating down the river. Well, the Charlotte piers beckoned them. So after a big heavy rain, you'd go down, there'd be 3 or 4 free boats. Well, the old saying, or the old adage, whatever it is, was that if you find a boat that is roaming free, it's yours.
Right.
And so what we would do now, it rained like crazy one summer there, and we went down the morning after the rain, and here's this 10 or 12 foot rowboat, no oars in it. Yeah, it had a pole.
Oh, yeah.
And they used poles.
Sure.
And Bobby and I don't know, Lindsay Dudley might have been with us at that time. I'm not sure. But anyhow, Bobby and I were there. Bobby got in the bow of that boat, and I got in the rear of it, and I was going to provide the propulsion with the pole.
Sure.
Push us along. And I pushed, and we went under the pier. And Bobby, without my knowing it, reached up and took hold of one of the pier rafters and pulled on the boat just as I was pushing on the pole. And it pulled me right into the water. That was fun. That was a funny thing. Well, we were excellent swimmers.
Yeah.
Because we lived almost on the water.
Yeah.
A lot of times. And that was a fun thing. Bobby didn't even know he'd done it.
Who was Wally that taught you how to swim in the
My older
the harbor
brother,
with
my
Wally.
older brother who,
Was that your brother's
my
name,
older
Wally?
brother who I was never. I loved him. He hated me.
I got a brother like that
Okay.
too. It's funny.
Well, he yeah. Wally, we had a swimming hole. We had a creek down behind our church, and right behind the church, somebody had dug out, and the water was clean,
Oh, it's
cold.
nice little.
It was clean and cold, and it was about 8 feet deep
Yeah.
at that point. And my older brother decided it was time for me to learn to swim. I was 6 years old, and he picked me up and threw me in the water.
Yep. My older
And
brother did the
I
same
had to
thing.
swim to get out.
Yeah, right.
He wasn't going to come in and get
Nope.
me. He would cross the street. If I'm walking down the street on one side, he's on the same side. He'd cross the street so you wouldn't have to cross with me.
Really?
I think he thought I was gay.
Okay. My brother would just pick me up and throw me, or he would punch me for no reason, and he would just call me terrible names, and it was just, I don't understand why I did what I did to him. I don't know, but as he grows up, he tells me about what a great older brother he was. His memories are completely different than mine. So maybe,
Wow.
Well,
it could have been. Wally became alcoholic.
Right.
My two brothers both died of alcoholism.
Oh, geez.
And my older sister, I think, was probably a closet alcoholic.
You see the signs.
My younger sister, I said three brothers. All three of them were alcohol. They died of alcoholism. Louise, I think might have been, but Helen had rheumatic fever when she was about 5 years old, and it weakened her heart.
Oh,
and, yeah. And so we lost her about, 10 years ago? 8 years ago?
She's my age. Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty good long life for having a bad heart.
Yeah, she did all right.
Yeah.
And she had two daughters. Unfortunately, one of them decided she'd rather be a man than a boy.
Yeah, there's a lot of that nowadays.
And the other one is was Helen, and Helen was just an angel. She was a wonderful person. She really was. Yeah, they were all in Florida. They lived in Florida.
I love Florida.
In the Orlando area. And there was sadness in the family there, health-wise, that nobody could do anything about.
Yeah.
That was life at the time. And but I think everybody is pretty okay now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the oldest, needless to say, at 95. I'm the last one of the oldsters. My my sister-in-law, Nancy, is just an angel. We just love her to death.
Yeah.
And she was Bobby's wife. And Bobby woke up every morning and reached to the table for his beer.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Such is life.
in about a week, I'm going to be about 39 years sober because I have the same problem,
Really?
or I'd be in the same boat. Yeah, drinking in the morning, just being stupid. Sorry they didn't get
You
away
can't,
from it.
yeah, you know that you can't explain those things.
No.
There is no, it just happens.
Yeah,
It happens, and you. I think sometimes some people are just destined
yeah, right,
to fill that particular part of our
right.
society.
I was just telling Wade, I remember sitting in jail at 17 years old going, this is not the way I wanted my life to go. And I just quit. I just stopped.
Good for you.
So not enough people get in trouble, I think.
Amen. I did the same thing with smoking.
Did you? There you go.
Hey, I was in El Centro and I was working for La Bolsa Tile, and a couple of the salesmen that sold us hardware came down every pheasant season. They would come down to the La Bolsa Tile, and I'd take them hunting,
Sure.
pheasant hunting.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And they all smoked. We all smoked.
Uh-huh.
And we went out on opening night, opening morning, and we had a kind of a bet going between the three of us. So there'd be $60 in the pot, and whoever got the first pheasant would get the $60.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the pheasant that I shot committed suicide. And we went out, and I said, I'm not going to give you money. I'm going to quit smoking. If I get the first pheasant, I'm going to quit smoking.
That's the way you win.
That pheasant came out of the sun right down in front of me, and about 20 feet in front of me, it turned right, and it pointed to its tail. No, it didn't put it, but it did fly in front of me, and I shot it and got it.
It's God's way of telling the time to quit smoking.
Well, the guy, I don't remember which one it was. One of the guys says, okay,
Give me your cigarettes. Oh, no.
And I said, no, I would like to keep them. And I did. And I kept those cigarettes on my dresser top for 20 years.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
I never put another one in my mouth.
Really?
Well, I take that back. I did put one in my, when I did Look Homeward Angel, a wolf drama at the College of San Mateo, and I was the drunken choir director, and I was supposed to smoke. I put it in my mouth. I didn't light it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I have not. Otherwise, I have not touched a cigarette to smoke it at all.
Wow, that's great will and determination.
I don't know what Wade's experience with cigarettes was, but it was never here.
Yeah.
I think he and Melinda both tried smoking, but I don't know whether they ever developed any kind of habit.
Yeah.
Or not. But we
Never
don't.
did.
No, we're non-smokers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so that pheasant hunting, though, that was great fun.
That's good fun.
It is great fun.
Well, what an amazing show today we've had today. It's I've gone through questions that I was wondering. I've talked about that. I've gone through your kids' questions. I don't have any more. Unless, Wade, do you have anything that we've missed?
He's got a couple of stories of people that he had associated with in North Carolina. bootleggers.
Oh.
Old school.
John
Gee,
D. Miller? No, John D.
Powell.
Powell. John D. Powell. I used to, when I'd take leave in San Diego, one of the things I liked to do was roller skate.
Oh,
They
okay.
had a wonderful skate,
Sure.
and at the skate door was a guard. And he checked everybody's skates coming in to make sure that they were what they were supposed to be and so forth. But he was built pretty much like Wade
Yeah.
or you.
Yeah.
Yeah, big, husky,
Big feller.
strong, no messed up business going on. You pay attention and you follow the rules.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I used to go skating and I just enjoyed it so much. It turns out that when I was after I quit school and was working with my dad for the first year in construction, that one of the people that I worked with was a plumber by the name of John D. Powell. And John D. was dry.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Teetotaler.
he was a teetotaler. He had become a teetotaler. And in order to do it, he went into this construction business. He was a good carpenter. And but when we got, he also drank. We got into the Dismal Swamp area, I think it's of Georgia, and he had a going concern involving bootleg whiskey on the side. And when I knew him and I worked with him, he would tell these stories about things that happened when he was bootlegging. He talked about the type of old Oldsmobile
Sure.
that where they had loaded the left side of the car with extra heavy springs and lead,
Yeah.
so that the car would look like it was driving straight and all that jazz. But if it wanted to turn right, it couldn't turn right. It would have to turn left, and it would stay on the road. They built a cabin, and they had a couple of pigs, and they had chickens. And when they would make runs and get a run made and made good money, they'd go to this hideaway.
Yeah.
Well, to get to the hideaway, you had to go down what really was a canal. And they had a 5-horsepower motor in the back. John said that this one guy, I think, was it John that got drunk? I don't think it was John. John was the driver. So they're driving down one of these canals, and a water moccasin snake on the limb above the trees that were growing over dropped off as they went under there. And he had on knee boots, and the knee boots opened up in the front, you know.
Sure.
And he was drunk as a skunk. And the snake fell into that knee boot.
Oh, no. That's a
And
poisonous snake.
John Powell said, "Hey, Ed," or whatever his name was, "there's a snake in your boot." He says, "Which one?" He says, "Your left one." And he reached in, picked that snake up, and dropped it overboard. And it didn't bite him.
Never got bit.
They went.
That
They
probably would have
went
killed
to
him.
that cabin. The cabin had a tin roof. It had a net around the chicken coop area, so that the chickens could have a place to exercise and eat and all that jazz. But they were safe from outside
From the hawks,
because
sure.
they lost possums and to possums and
yeah.
to
Raccoons,
to coons and to foxes
foxes, sure.
and so forth. And they could never catch them because they were doing it at 2:00 in the morning.
Right.
Stuff. So
Little bandits.
they put that big fence around it.
Yeah.
And one night he woke up, had a shotgun standing beside him, and he woke up because he could hear the
net.
fence,
Yeah, the
fence rattling
sure.
and stuff. And he got the shotgun, got up very quietly, went out through the front door, and as he went through the front door, he heard sounds over his head on the tin roof. He had a flashlight, and he hit the ground, turned the flashlight around to this bobcat
Oh,
that had launched itself to him,
wow.
toward him,
Right.
and he was able to get the gun up and nail him.
Wow. It's coming after him.
It was coming after him.
Wow.
And I didn't know bobcats would be that aggressive. I knew, lynxes and bobcats,
Yeah.
wildcats will fight if they have to.
But when they've got
generally,
they got chickens over there, why
Well,
would they? He must have been
yeah.
hungry.
Yeah, amen. And the fact that the chicken, but the feeling was that guy's on the roof as a guard.
Something. Yeah.
Anyhow,
Might have been another
He
one.
got him.
He got him.
you got it.
Yeah. Well, I sure appreciate the time you spent with us today.
Oh my goodness.
What a great time I've had.
Well, it has been my pleasure, I can tell you, and I am loaded now with memories that I haven't thought of for a long, long time.
Well, it's,
I could keep going, but I won't do it because it's going to bore you.
it wouldn't bore me. It's just like a trip down memory lane for you, but for me, it's a history lesson. You learn different
Well,
things.
thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome.
And I trust that those who see this will enjoy
Yeah.
it along with it was a rough life in a lot of respects, but it was what was going on with a lot of people in the late 30s, early 40s, and we all went through it.
Post-Depression.
We didn't, the post-Depression, you couldn't get away from it.
I remember we'd go out into the snow, quick story, and my grandma would take one of her saved bread bags. She would put a sock on, and then she'd put a bread bag over our feet and put another sock over that,
Yes.
and then you put on your boots.
Yes,
to keep
you have.
And they
you
had
have
more money.
stories that would, yeah, you
Same
have.
thing. They didn't need to do that kind of thing.
No.
They had all kinds of money, but they were brought up in the Depression, and they straightened out nails. They didn't throw anything away,
That's true.
Right.
Yeah, we were still using square nails
Square nails.
when
Sure.
the first nails I remember were square nails.
Remodeled.
They weren't 20 millimeter
No.
10s or 6s or
No.
8s.
You just cut them out of a big piece of metal, and they were just square.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think of my mother and what she had to go through to bring us 6 kids up.
That's a lot.
For every once in a while, it'll dawn on me You're a pretty lucky guy.
You're a pretty lucky guy.
You're a pretty lucky guy. She took good care of you. They made sure what is the song that has you raise Cain on Saturday, but you go to church on Sunday. And we did. And like I said, we always sang. Oh, we'd sing in the car. My goodness alive. We would travel. When we would travel, we sang like crazy all the time. And that's where I learned the John Denver song.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When I was a little bitty boy, just off of the floor, we used to go down to Grandma's house every night or so. We'd have chicken pie and country ham, homemade butter on the bread. But the best darn thing about Grandma's house was a great big feather bed. It was 9 feet tall, 6 feet wide, soft as a downy chick. It was made from the 40s, feathers of 40 little geese took a hole to talk for the tick. It would raise all kids and 4 hound dogs and a piggy we stole from the shed. You didn't have much fun, but you didn't have much sleep, but you got a lot of fun on the Grandma's feather bed.
I love you guys, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.